So, as experienced data practitioners, I'm sure you always get to work with perfect data with no duplicate or missing rows. No, me neither. So are you going to get better better results from the data you have today? So we're going to cover 3 things today. First, a brief intro on how to get the most from this session. Then I'm going to talk about arrays and structs and why they're becoming more common in the largest data sets. And then I'm going to talk about window functions, starting with 2 more simple examples of sums and moving averages, and then using what we've learned to generate sessions from website visitor logs. So this is an advanced SQL session, but if you're newer to SQL, just sit back and absorb. The slides and the recording will be available afterwards, so don't worry about anything. If you are an experienced SQL person, you want to follow the code along. Each page will have a little link at the bottom with the code, and it's a tool that allows you to run the code yourself, make edits, see how it works. If you don't want to type in 20 tiny links, this QR code will take you to a page that has all of them. It's a slightly longer version of the talk, so skip to the arrays section if you're doing that. So I think that's all the phones down. Great. Some of the slides have quite a lot of stuff on, so I've tried to make them clearer with highlighting. So things that have changed from the previous slide are usually in blue. Key data features are in green. And things that are issues or errors are in red. So overall, just look at the highlighted areas. Finally, some things are different between SQL versions. I'll try and call that out when that happens. So first, let's talk about arrays. So in general, we like to store data in normalized schemas. There's a large number of reasons for that, which I won't go into today. But one of them is it avoids data duplication. So say here on the left-hand side, we'd done every order and every product in that. We'd put the name and the category, and then we wanted to change the product name. We'd have to change it maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of times, depending on how big the business is. Whereas a normalized schema, we store the product once, and then we store all the orders of that product. However, the downside of normalized data is it requires more joins. So you see on the left, you can get all the dairy orders just from a select from where category equals dairy. But on the right, to do the same thing, you need a join. And in general, that's not a problem. But if your data set is, say, 1 billion rows, and you're joining it onto another data set of, say, 1 billion rows, you're going to have a slightly bad time. And so for really large data sets, it's becoming more common to try and store everything in one big table. And one of the tools that allows you to do that effectively is maps and structs. And so when I say that, what do I mean? So an array could be something like this. So here we've got our products, and maybe we want to have their allergens in a systematic way. And so we've got milk, which is an allergen milk. We have yogurt, which also has milk in it. But granola actually has 4. It has oats, barley, soya, and nuts. You can tell I wrote this while eating my breakfast. So, and the other thing you can do is store maps and structs. So here we might want to store manufactured country, use by dates for the milk and the yogurt, best before dates for the granola, and brand for the Kellogg's. And you can see what's interesting about this is each of those fields is storing a different set of keys. And so how do you work with this data? One way is accessing elements one by one. So for example, here, we're selecting the product name, and then we're going to select allergen 0. So if you're thinking about arrays, it's 0 index, you're taking the first element from the array. So here we have, the milk you get for both, but with granola, where we've got 4, we just get the oats. You can also, with the structs or the key value pairs, you can say you just want the use by field. So where we've got a use by, we get it, otherwise we get a null. But there's a slightly better way of doing this, which is using a function called cross-join unnest, which some of you might have seen. It's also sometimes called lateral view explode if you are in Redshift. And what this does is effectively it turns that array into multiple rows. So you can see here, we've got granola, or on that side, we've got granola, has four items in the array, oats, barley, soya, and nuts, and it's now 4 rows in your table. And you can now work with that as normal. The same thing can be done with maps and structs, so you can effectively unpivot them, and you're giving the cross-join unnest the name of the column in brackets, and then T is then effectively your table name, and you name the 2 columns. And so most newer databases can work with arrays. Presto, Trino, and BigQuery call them cross-join nests. For Postgres, which if you're following along with the code, you'll see you can use it for arrays, but only JSON for maps. And HiveSQL and Spark use lateral view explode. Cool. So now let's talk about window functions. So first, the value of window functions is they allow you to do things which would be more complex without or require multiple subqueries. So one example we're going to start with is calculating total spend. So here we've got 4 rows for 2 orders. You first got order A333. They've ordered 3 products, 10101, 10102, 10103, and they cost £5, £2, and £3. And we want to say on the right that that order, the total order value is 10, but instead of compressing it into 1 row, we want to keep all the original rows. And then the second order, A666, total order value is 2. So if we wanted to do this without a window function, we could. We'd need a subquery. We'd first calculate the order total. So you'd calculate order ID, sum of price, and group by that. And then you'd join that back in, just joining on the order ID. But it's a little bit long-winded. So with a window function, it simplifies it. So I'll talk you through how this works if any of you are new to window functions. So we're summing price. So that's the same as if you're doing a group by style array. Yeah, I'm going to try and not stand in the way here. And then you've got this word over, which is kind of telling it that you wanted to do something unusual. And here we've got partition by, and that means if you think of it like a group by, you're then summing everything where in this category it's the same. So here we're saying where partition by order ID, so you're summing price across everything where the order ID is the same as the current order ID. And so that's why you get 5 plus 2 plus 3 to get 10 for each of those rows. And you can also do multiple columns here. So say you wanted to do order ID and category, which would change, means the first 2 rows we get 5 plus 2 to get 7. The third row, that's the only fruit for that order, so we get 3. And then the final row remains on its own. And then my favorite feature, which I found out while writing this query, this talk, is you then have qualify. So if you know where for normal SQL, and you know having when you've got a group by, qualify gives you this kind of overview when you've done a window function. Cool. So now let's talk about moving averages. So this is something else that window functions do that's really cool and quite difficult to do otherwise. So let's say we had this graph of units sold. It's pretty noisy, and so maybe we want to put a nice average line on it. You could probably do that in your plotting function, but you can also do it in SQL. And so the way you do that with SQL is, again, using a window function. So you're averaging over units sold, which are a units sold column. And you're then saying over, and this time we're not doing a partition by because we're looking at everything. But instead we're doing order by, which is saying order the whole table before you do this. And then you want to do rows between one preceding and current row. And so what this is saying is take the table, order it all, look at the current row, look one up, and take the average of those 2. And so here, kind of the 3rd of January, you can see 130 plus 150 averaged make 140. And so if you want to do a weekly average, you need to do 6 days preceding, which is the kind of thing that catches everyone out, because it's the 6th preceding row and the current row to get today for 7. Cool. So now on to the final bit, using window functions to generate sessions. So again, if you want to use the QR code, go for it. I can see some cameras, so I'll do this. This one, we need to use window functions about 4 times to get where we're going. So I'll give people a second. OK. Cool. So let's say you've got website sessions. We've had 2 users who I've imaginatively named AAAA and BBBBB. The first user comes on, visits the home page and then the about page. Then they go away for about 10 minutes, come back, go to the shop page, go away for about 35 minutes, go home, and then go to the about page again. User BBB goes to the home and the contact page. And where we want to get is we've split by user ID. We've identified the start of each session, so the first page in each session, and then we've identified a unique session ID. And so I'm going to take you through how we do that. So the first thing we want to do is identify the details of the previous page view. And this is essential because this allows us to identify if we've started a new session, like if there's been a gap of more than 30 minutes. And so we can do this without a window function, and this is probably the most horrible piece of SQL so far, because you have to do a left outer join on every previous page view. So you're kind of, if you've got 100 views for this user, you're potentially joining onto 100 rows and then aggregating it. So this is also incredibly inefficient. Although quite nice to know that it's possible. So you're joining here to join for every previous view, so that's that middle pink row. Then you're taking the max time of that, and then you're joining back on to get the details of that using the time. So with the window function, this is pretty great. And we've got one new thing that we haven't used so far, which is the lag function. There's two great functions in SQL called lead and lag, which either go up for lag or down for lead a row. And so here what we're saying is go up a row, return page view ID, and the one there means go up one row. Then you're saying, again, window function, over partitioning by user ID, so we're only looking if the user ID is the same, and we're ordering by view time, so we're sorting for each user all their views in order, and then we're taking the previous page view. And we're doing the same for view time. And so that gives us this output, which my head, I think, is in the way of. Actually, come over here. So the next thing we want to do is identify the first page view each session. So the way to do that is we've got some logic for what we want to do. The first thing we want to say is if it's the first session, if there's no previous page view, it must be the first time they've ever visited the site, new session. If the time difference in minutes between the previous page view and the current one is less than 30, it's the same session. If not, it's a new session. So we've got our identification. So that gives us this column here. Then we want to know how many sessions has each user had, because we're going to use that to create our ID. And this is probably the most fun part of this from my perspective. So we're again summing new sessions. And this is going to look pretty similar to our moving average code. But there's one new piece, which I've highlighted in green, which is a great thing called unbounded proceeding. And what this means is you sum not 1 row back, 2 row back, 5 row back. You're summing back every previous row to try and get every row. So it's effectively a cumulative sum. And so that gives you how many sessions so far. And so then you've got your session index. And then finally, we turn that into a new unique session ID. You might have already seen how I've done this. We effectively take what we just did, do a text join with the user ID, and then we get a unique ID. So we've done it. We have now got unique session IDs. And this is really useful because we can now do some really great analyses. You might want to look at how many sessions you've had, how many different user sessions. You might want to do how long is the average session length, or how much time has this user spent on the website. You might want to find one-page sessions, which are sometimes called bounce sessions, to identify them. So yeah, thank you very much, and any questions?
Love it. Okay. The number of photographs is always a good sign of a talk.
Well, it's a QR code.
We love it. We love it. And it's nuts to think SQL's been around for 50 years or something crazy, which is madness. We will take 2 questions, and again, I'll run around. Do we have any? I thought that was the literal furthest point of the whole room, but she was drinking a beer. Do we have any questions for Lydia, please? Thank you very much. I'm on my way. I'm expecting another hand. Hey, I'm not leaving till we've had 2.
Thank you very much. Really interesting joins and all of that. I'm wondering, how expensive are these joins? Because sometimes when you're using SQL and your joins and you don't want to view more than 10 or 1,000 rows because otherwise it's going forever. So what about these new tools, the window tool and also this unbounded one? So how much?
Oh, how expensive are the window functions?
Yeah, resource-wise, yeah.
It's a good question. Mostly they're pretty efficient. In the case of the final example of the session, like previous session ID, the window function is a lot more efficient. In general, it's very similar to any other way of doing it. So I look like, within kind of 10% either way. But yeah, for the one where you're joining onto everything, then it's much more efficient because it's not doing that. It's actually, the way I kind of verbally explained it is kind of how it runs.
Fan.
In matter if the rows are in those columns are indexed or not, because
Yes.
when you are doing like finding distinct or all those, if you're not doing on an index column, then it takes much longer
Yes.
than the one.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
definitely
have to make
the-
all those columns first indexes as well.
Yeah, if you're having to sort it, the advantage actually, and I know this is a big thing if you're using Spark, is the advantage of these when you're doing it a partition by is you're not sorting the whole table, you're sorting subsets. So say, for example, I don't know why this would happen, but say it was indexed on user ID but not on view time, it would be much quicker than, say, sorting the whole table by view time and then trying to do something on that, because it's only subsets, which is quite powerful.
Perfect, thank you. Was there one more? There is, at the back. Yes, come on. What am I doing? You're going to have to pass this back, please.
Pass it.
Thank you, Lydia. It's really interesting. From the perspective of partitioning, if I want to use window functions, is there any way of more optimized way to more efficiently do these shuffling within subsets?
Yeah, so I think if you have, ironically, if your partition by is the same column you're partitioned on, which sounds almost like a tautology, that will be a lot more efficient, because then it will only, it can almost in parallel take every partition, work on that partition. And then, of course, if you have an index on whatever your sort by column is, that will also speed that up. So, yeah, both of these things.
Challenge Annika. No one else remembers that, do they? I'm so old. Yeah, thank you very much, Lydia.
Thank you very much.
Can we have another round of applause, please?